there, and welcome to this explainer. If you are prepping for your Edexcel GCSE psychology exams, and specifically looking at the criminal psychology topic, you have landed in the exact right place. Today, we're going to absolutely master social learning theory. We'll break down the core concepts, tackle some real exam scenarios, and figure out exactly what you need to know to secure those top marks. So, bring your focus and let's get started. Here's our quick game plan for today's revision. First, we'll hit the core of SLT, then the rules of imitation, the 4 crucial steps, how to actually apply the theory to crime, and finally, evaluating the whole thing.
All right, part 1, the core of SLT. Let's get into the absolute basics of Bandura's theory.
So before we just hand over the answers, let's do a quick mental check. Think back to the foundational concepts here. What exactly did Bandura suggest about how we learn behaviors? Give it a second. If you're taking notes, see if you can jot it down right now from memory before we move on. Okay, here's the textbook definition you're going to want to lock in. Social learning theory assumes that behavior is learned indirectly from observing others. I really want to highlight those 2 specific words, indirectly and observing. Bandura was basically saying, hey, we don't just learn by getting rewards or punishments ourselves. We actually learn a ton simply by watching the people around us do their thing. And there's a really logical flow to how this happens. It all starts with observation, literally just watching someone. Then we hit a massive key word for your exams, vicarious reinforcement. This means seeing someone else get rewarded for what they just did. Seeing that reward pushes us to the next step, imitation, where we actually copy the act. And finally, we get reinforced ourselves, which completely cements the behavior. That logical chain is absolutely essential to remember. Moving right along to part 2, rules of imitation. Because who exactly do we copy? Think about it. We see hundreds of people every single day, right? But we definitely don't copy all of them. To figure out who makes the cut, we look at Pennington's research from 1986. Pennington laid out 3 specific variables that make us way more likely to imitate someone. First up, the characteristics of the observer, so us. For instance, individuals with lower self-esteem might be a bit more prone to copying others. Second, the characteristics of the model, meaning the person we're watching. We naturally gravitate towards models who are a similar age to us and, really importantly, people who hold a high status. And third, what actually happens to the model? Do they get praised? Punished? Basically, the big takeaway is that we're super motivated to copy high-status role models who share similar characteristics with us. Let's put that to the test with a real-world dilemma. Based on Pennington's rules, who is going to have more influence over a young person? A peer who's seen as super high status and cool, who happens to be taking drugs, or their parents, threatening them not to take drugs? Well, based on that whole similar age and high status thing we just talked about, the theory strongly suggests the cool peer is way more likely to be imitated, even with the parents' warnings. Okay, part 3, the 4 steps of SLT. Time to master the ARMM framework. Now, observational learning doesn't just magically happen. There's a pretty strict cognitive framework here, and I want you to memorize this exact acronym, ARRM. ARRM. These are Bandura's 4 absolute requirements. Number 1 is attention. You've got to actually be paying attention to the role model. 2 is retention. You have to be able to retain a memory of what they did. I mean, if you forget it, you obviously can't copy it. 3 is reproduction. You need the physical or mental ability to actually perform the action. And 4 is motivation. You have to actually want to generate that learned behavior. It acts like a continuous chain reaction. Attention flows right into retention, which leads to reproduction and then motivation. And honestly, that final motivation step, it usually links right back to that vicarious reinforcement we brought up earlier. Seeing someone else snag a reward gives you that final, necessary push to just go for it and do the behavior yourself. All right, section 4, applying SLT to crime. Let's put this theory into practice. This is the big pivot, going from just knowing the theory to actually cashing in on those AO2 exam marks. Here's a classic 2-mark scenario for you. Harriet gets excluded from school for starting a fight, punching another girl, and swearing at a teacher. Jane is watching Harriet. 2 days later, Jane starts a fight with her sister. Use social learning theory to explain Jane's behavior. Take a quick pause here and see if you can string an answer together using those ARRM steps. Let's break down the perfect model answer to grab both of those marks. You'd want to write something like, social learning theory suggests behaviors are learned indirectly through observation.
Jane may see Harriet as a role model, so she paid attention to Harriet punching the girl, retained the behavior, and reproduced it on another occasion in the fight with her sister. Do you see what happened there? The answer explicitly uses the heavy-hitter terminology: observation, role model, attention, retained, reproduced. That is literally exactly what the examiners are hunting for.
Let's hit one more, just to completely lock it down. Here's another 2-mark question. A group of friends is out shopping. One of them shoplifts some clothes and shares the stolen goods. The others think the shoplifter is cool. Using your knowledge of social learning theory, explain what might happen the next time they're out shopping. How would you tackle this one?
It's so cool how these concepts weave together perfectly. Here's your model answer. The friends observe their role model stealing, paying close attention. Afterwards, they see the shoplifter receiving vicarious reinforcement when they all praise them and share the clothes. If they retained knowledge of the behavior, next time they shop, they may imitate and reproduce the stealing. They are motivated by the hope of receiving that same positive reinforcement. Masterful use of vicarious reinforcement and motivation right there. Guaranteed full marks.
Finally, Section 5, Evaluating the Theory. This is where we do the critical thinking for those top-tier marks.
Yep, this is your AO3 objective. Demonstrating you can think critically is how you stand out. So let's do a quick silent solo moment here. Really think about social learning theory as an explanation for crime. Is it always perfect? Or can you think of some crimes or situations where it just completely misses the mark? What are the theory's blind spots?
Let's actually weigh the strengths against the limitations. On the plus side, we have hard evidence. Bandura's 1960 study on nursery children showed they absolutely copied aggressive models, especially same-sex ones. And crazily enough, the kids even invented brand new ways to hit the Bobo doll, which proved they had truly internalized the learning. It's great because it explains why motivation matters and how we learn without direct consequences. But look at the limitations. Studies like Bandura's only measure short-term effects. We obviously can't test the long-term impact of exposing people to criminal models because, well, that would be completely unethical. Plus, there are just some crimes it genuinely struggles to explain.
Which brings us to a really interesting final thought. Can social learning theory truly explain a highly secretive, individualistic crime like fraud? Or is something like that driven purely by inner financial motivation rather than observing some role model? That is a massive limitation of the theory, and you should definitely drop that into your exam essays. All right, that wraps up this explainer on social learning theory. Keep reviewing, practice writing out that ARMA acronym, and best of luck crushing your psychology revision.